that bar steel, but
I know.
we'll take it.
You hesitated.
Good morning, everyone. Hope you're all having a wonderful day today. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the Sig P365. But before we get into the video, if you don't know, Gun Deals is a website that will provide you with links to some of the best products and prices in the industry. Now, they don't take your money, they don't buy or sell anything, they only point you in the right direction. So whatever it is that you're looking for, maybe even the subject of today's video, go ahead and check out gun.deals. They might have a link for, again, the best possible price. And again, it doesn't cost you anything. Now, with all that out of the way, while you're here, go ahead and like, share, and subscribe, as all that sort of stuff is free and does help the channel out quite a bit. Also, go ahead and comment literally anything down below. Full disclosure on the Sig P365, we have no affiliation with Sig whatsoever. We paid our own money for this. We actually got this. This is technically a factory second or a factory refurbished. Really, it's just a way to get around the MAP pricing. We picked this up for $420 from Locked and Loaded, I want to say. So 420 bucks shipped was a very, very good price for a brand new Sig P365 with night sights. But again, we have no affiliation or sponsorship with Sig for this video. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Sig P365 is sort of the progenitor or the gold standard of subcompact, slim, double stack or 1.5 stack magazines. So what you get is a very small, very lightweight package that still has a very decent ammo capacity. Back in the day, it used to be the Glock 43 was the small, slim light gun, but it only had a 7-round capacity. Nowadays, the Sig P365 has 10. You have the Shield Plus at 12, the XL at 12, the Hellcat at 12. And so you get a lot more capacity with that double stack or 1.5 stack style magazines, with a virtually unchanged exterior dimensions, which means that you get more capacity, you get more rounds per magazine in a very similar package. And again, the Sig P365 was kind of the first venture, or at least the first mainstream venture into that realm, and it was very, very successful. So now there are a lot of different versions of the Sig P365. I think there's 10 or 12 total different variations. This one here specifically is the Nitron version. So this one here actually comes with very nice night sights as standard, which is quite nice. Again, especially for the price that we paid of $420. Now, since its inception, there is a ton of competition in the space. And so today we're going to be going over how it performed and whether or not, even in 2022, heading into 2023 and the future, if it is still worth the money and it's still worthy of basically being the gold standard or the original in that double stack subcompact genre. Now, getting into specifics on the Sig P365, let's go ahead and start with its diminutive size. So overall, you have a gun that is slightly less than 6 inches long. I believe it's 5.8 inches long, just over 1 inch wide at 1.06 inches, 4.3 inches tall with the flush fit magazine with a 3.1 inch barrel. Now, the weight comes in at under 18 ounces. Under 18 ounces for any handgun is very, very light. And again, depending on the magazine you're using, you're either getting 10 or 12 rounds of capacity in a very small, very compact package. Now, the barrel material itself, I believe, is 4150, which is a very tough, very durable steel, though we're only dealing with 9mm, so it's not the most imperative, but again, it is a high quality steel. Now, the material on the slide is stainless steel. I believe, again, it's probably 416. They don't say exactly what the material is, but if I had to bet, I would say it's probably 416. Now, the finish in my very limited time and use with the P365 has held up well, though I have heard from several other sources that the coating on the P365 is a little bit lacking and does tend to rust in very adverse, wet, and moist environments. So depending on your use case for it and where you live, I would definitely look into that and see whether that could be an issue for you in your circumstances. Now, the frame itself is going to be a very standard polymer frame. When we get into the specifics on it, it does have an accessory rail up front, not a Picatinny rail. It's its own kind of proprietary rail. Now, the virtue of this being a very popular handgun means that they make a lot of aftermarket accessories for it. So if this is a P365, an everyday carry gun, if you will, the importance of having a light and a holster that fits said light the likelihood of that is very high when you have a popular handgun that a lot of people are making accessories for. Now, on top of that, it does come again with very nice night sights, but on anything that you're going to be carrying nearly 100% of the time, personally, I would want to have a light on it, which is why currently I do not have a light for this handgun. And if I were to be carrying this might be my only carry gun. It would definitely have to have a light on it. This being said, because it does not have a light on it, there are certain circumstances which I absolutely will not carry it. Now, moving back from the accessory rail, we have our takedown lever and slide stop and slide release. Now, this is, again, kind of an everyday carry design, so it is fairly diminutive, though I haven't had any issues getting it to work on the range or having it not work or be accidentally held down or held up. I haven't had any sort of ergonomic issues with it. It is fairly far forward, so if you have smaller hands, like my wife's hands, for instance, that can be a very difficult thing to reach and to get enough leverage on to actuate it. Again, for some people it's going to be an issue, for some people it won't be. It's really going to depend on your body dynamics. Now, getting into the grip itself, this is a kind of tale of two cities. About 50% of the area where you will be touching the gun has absolutely no texturing whatsoever. So if your hands are sweaty, it's wet, muddy, what have you, you're going to be lacking a lot of the grip that you could have should they continue on the decent texturing that they have higher up and put it in more places. So a lot of what you see here is just perfectly smooth, slick polymer, which I do not prefer. And then the bottom half of the grip, which is the more important place to have it, though again, I would rather have it in more places. The texturing itself is good. It's grippy. It's kind of a light sandpaperish texture. It's definitely not something that I would consider to be overly aggressive, though it still does provide you with enough grip. And again, for everyday carry, they probably don't want it to be too uncomfortable for people carrying it in appendix and depending on your holster and a variety of other factors as well. Again, I wish they just had more of it in more places, and that is basically my complaint with every modern factory handgun. Now let's go ahead and talk about the worst part of every Sig P365, and it's actually not the trigger, it's actually going to be the magazines. Now, the magazines themselves are fairly high quality. I have had not a single issue with any of them. The problem with them is they're 60 bucks for what? And it only comes with 2 of them, so they are extremely overpriced. Now, you can probably find them on sale occasionally for 50 or maybe slightly under 50. Dealer price on these is not very good either, if you wanted to know. So these are overpriced to an insane degree, probably because they're not making much money on the handguns themselves, and then they're nickel and diming you for the accessories. All jokes aside, the magazine quality themselves is quite nice. They fit very nicely. They come with 2 different types. The one that I have here has a little bit of an extended grip, and they have more of a flush fit one. They both hold the same 10 rounds, though generally when I'm carrying it, I have this slightly extended base plate model, as it is slightly better for me to carry. Now, I have smaller-ish hands. If you have larger hands, you will absolutely not be able to get all of your fingers on the grip without hanging your pinky down below. Because again, I have a harder time fitting all of my fingers on the grip, and I have smaller sized hands. So if you have medium sized hands or larger, you're going to have a little bit harder of a time. Now, to remedy some of that, Sig has very nicely undercut the handgun. You could make it a little bit more aggressive if you wanted to remove some excess material there, though not much. They've done about as good as they could without making the grip a little bit longer. Now, talking about the magazine and magazine release, magazines drop free. Again, the magazines themselves, while they are viciously overpriced, they are very nice in terms of their function. We jammed these fully loaded 10+1 every single time that we shot it on the range and had absolutely no issues. So now with all of that out of the way, we can actually go ahead and talk about the trigger. Now, when you pick this up for the first time, as I did, and dry fire it, the trigger feels absolutely terrible. It feels like a spongy, wet fart. There's like 3 different walls. So basically, you have your normal amount of take-up for a striker-fired handgun. All of that is just fine. And then you sit there and you build pressure, and it's going to roll through like a first gritty wall. See there, the trigger moved like a 1/4 inch or so. Did not break, but it moved about a 1/4 inch. Now I'm on like the second wall, and if I keep building pressure, it's moving, it's moving, it's moving, and then it breaks, and then it breaks at the very, very back. Now, not only that, but it has this really weird sound and feel to it. It sounds like a buffer spring twain from like an AR-15. So again, you have that normal amount of take up, all that is fine. You pull through that first wall, see my finger moves, and you have that second wall almost. It's like a 3-stage trigger. So you have that, now you're on the wall, and then it moved again, and it kind of rolls through and eventually breaks at somewhere between like 6.5 pounds. Now the trigger itself is not heavy. It is a decent feeling trigger, so if you're sitting there just pulling it quickly, you're not really going to notice the fact that it has a very creepy, gritty, it's not really gritty, I would say, but it almost has like 3 different walls in there where you kind of get, it'll move and then move and then move again if you're pulling it really slowly. However, even though I do have some problems with the grip, some of the ergonomics, well, not really the ergonomics, but the grip itself isn't my favorite, and the trigger feels bad, when I was actually shooting this, I had a very pleasant time with it. I was able to hit standing shots at 70, 80 yards on reduced size steel, absolutely without issue. I had no problems with it whatsoever. The one thing I would say about it that we haven't talked about, while the trigger pull itself is bad, it's kind of bad, the reset is also pretty long. It is forced, but it's pretty long. So if you're used to a shorter style reset, this can throw you off a little bit. So the first couple times, usually when I get a gun out of the box, the first thing I do is I just burn through a mag. That's not how you should break in every gun. That's generally just what I choose to do, to be a little bit harsher on them than you need to be. But generally when I would pull it up and I would want to, okay, so I'm just going to draw and then go for it, I would have a little bit of trigger freeze because I'm used to shooting Glocks and Canics and even like Smith & Wesson, which doesn't have a great reset, but they have a better reset, or at least a shorter reset than the Sig P365. Now that is just a training thing. Once you get used to it, you can shoot it just as fast as any other micro compact gun. In terms of accuracy, again, while the trigger does not feel good in dry fire, it does not feel good when you're sitting there and you're really going over all of its dynamics. It really doesn't feel very good. It feels subjectively or objectively bad, I would say. But then when you actually take it out and shoot it, it was actually very pleasant. Yeah, you really got to let go of the trigger to let it reset. You can't ride it as hard as you can on some other guns. The one thing that I will say is that is aided by the sights on here are very good. So the sight picture that you get is you have a high vis. It's just basically a painted green front sight. And then you have, of course, the 3 tritium vials, 2 in the back, 1 in the front. And then you have a square notch in the rear, and they're all serrated to reduce glare. The sight picture itself works very well. It's a fairly precise sight picture. There's not a lot of error one way or the other. And that, for me, is kind of like how I like iron sights. I prefer red dots, but if it's going to be iron sights, I don't like there to be too much air because I feel like that's a little bit more ambiguous as to where that front sight should actually be. And again, on the Sig P365, taking shots at 60, 70 yards was no problem whatsoever, and it was actually fairly accurate and easy to control. Now, when I say easy to control, we are still talking about a 18-ounce gun, a small 18-ounce gun firing full-powered 9mm ammunition. A lot of what we shot was 115 grain Tula and then 124 grain Norma. So there was a big discrepancy in terms of power between those two ammunitions. And with like a 115 plus P or a 124 plus P, you are definitely going to feel the recoil. Not that it's uncontrollable, but it is definitely something that is more aggressive, more snappy, more pushy than a larger full-size frame gun will be. So while the trigger and grip combined kind of feel subpar on paper, or at least in dry fire, again, when you're actually shooting them, I have no complaints whatsoever. Now again, we just took this out of the box, jammed up some magazines, put a couple hundred rounds through it of really crappy, cheap steel case ammunition and some Norma 124 grains, and it had absolutely zero issues. Reliability so far has been perfect. Now we're going to keep this around for some time. We're going to do comparisons between this and other subcompact guns, just like we're doing with the full-size guns. So we'll have kind of two distinct categories of guns to review. The full-size guns and comparing them between themselves, and then the smaller guns, the subcompacts, will also be compared. It's not that bad. It's not that bad. I mean, it is a small gun. There's stout recoil to it, but able to target like 60 yards first mag. Trigger sucks, but at this point, I'm actually very pleased with how this shot, how it actually performed when shooting with it, how controllable it was, how easy it was to make shots at extended distances, especially for a subcompact gun. So its performance so far has been flawless. I don't have any complaints about that whatsoever. And especially for, again, the price that we paid for it, $420 for a very decently featured, small framed gun with a decent capacity, very good iron sights that, again, performed very well when actually shooting it. So it really doesn't leave me with all that much to complain about. Yeah, the magazines are expensive and overpriced. The grip texture is okay to subpar, and the trigger doesn't feel good in dry fire. But again, its real-world performance and reliability so far has been very, very good. So, with all of that out of the way, guys, let me know what's your favorite subcompact gun, the double-stacked Micro 9 kind of genre. Let me know what that is in the comments down below. And maybe next month we will get in a couple of them to try out and then compare and contrast with the Sig P365. We might do a dedicated comparison video between this and the Smith & Wesson CSX. But again, let me know what you guys want to see. Go ahead and comment that down below. And with all that out of the way, guys, thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. I'll see you in the next one. Peace off.